of labor satisfy a definite social need and thus maintain its position as an element of the total labor as a branch of the social division of labor, which originally sprang up spontaneously. By the way, like, this shit can be dense, and it's written with, like, you know, old verbiage, so forgive me if I misspeak every now and again. And I lost where I can. Where were we? Here we go. On the other hand, it can satisfy the manifold needs of the individual producer himself only insofar as every particular kind of useful private labor can be exchanged with, counts as, equal of every other kind of useful private labor. Look, so what about the design of the coat? That's labor. That's you doing labor, and that's adding value to the coat. This is confusing, but what this is basically, the thing about Marx is, first of all, he says some like really confusing, complex shit, but then he simplifies it in the end. I mean, is thinking labor? It depends on who you ask. I feel like, yes, thinking is labor. So equality in the full sense between different kinds of labor can be arrived at only if we abstract from their real inequality, if we reduce them to the characteristics that they have in common, that being the expenditure of human labor power. As in, like, it was confusing here because he's talking about different kinds of labor, but here we're amalgamating all of this into the expenditure of human labor power, of human labor is in the abstract. The private producer's brain reflects this twofold social character of his labor only in the forms which appears in practical intercourse in the exchange of products. Hence, the socially useful character of his private labor is reflected in the forms that the product of labor has to be useful to others. The other character of equality of the various kinds of labor is reflected in the form of the common character as values possessed by these materially different things and as products of labor. As in, okay, so what if? Let me know. What capitalist is taking those measurements and then orders a worker to make a coat? Managers don't do labor. If you're ordering workers to do something, you're not doing labor, you're exploiting the labor of others. Like, definitionally, according to Marx's beliefs at the very least, managers and supervisors don't engage in labor, they engage in control over the labor of others and control over the means of production in order to sustain production of commodities. So, I'm trying to find where I am again. Isn't organizing a form of labor? Yes. But organizing, for, like, example, progressive victory organizing, that's labor, right? But there's no boss and there's no profit margin, you know? Like, progressive victory, let's say you were working with your state lead. They are above you. They rank above you in that they organize events that you take part in, right? You're out there knocking on doors, you're doing labor. They are telling you to go knock on doors, they are not engaging in labor. But if we take the profit motive out of this, then yes, they are engaging in labor. Better yet, say worker takes measurements, gives it to the capitalist. Based on those measurements, capitalist is designing the perfect, but first of all, no, the capitalist doesn't design anything. The designer is its own labor. That's a different job. The factory owner doesn't design the coat. No, Marxism is theft. You don't have to type slower. Just for a second. Hear me out here. Your argument here in and of itself is incorrect, as the capitalist doesn't design the coat. The designer designs the coat, and that is their labor. Profit makes the difference because of value. When we talk about when we talk about profit, we're referring to money, right? We're talking about commodities and exchange values. Well, exchange value only exists based on the amount of labor you put into the article. And so if you, outside of a for-profit system, are creating something, right? You are still creating the same exchange value because of the same amount of labor you're putting into it. It's just your manager in this case is also doing labor because their job wouldn't be to make sure you do your job. It would be they're engaging in it, but they also have other responsibilities on top of it. They would still be doing the same job as you. The progressive victory example was your state lead still goes out and knocks on doors with you, and hence they do labor. The capitalist is putting up the capital to hire the guy that makes the perfect coat, and then the capitalist exploits the coat designed to make themselves more money. Exactly. Men do not therefore bring the products of their labor into relation with each other as values because they see these objects merely as the material integument. That's a word I don't know. It's not often that happens. A tough outer protective layer, especially that of an animal or a plant. Integument, as the material integument of the homogeneous human labor, as in the value of the labor is not shown in the labor, it's shown in it is amalgamated into a mass, a homogeneous mass. We don't differentiate the tailor from the coat maker. Tailor and the, what's the goddamn other example he gives? The miner and the tailor. We don't distinctly assign them different kinds of labor. We just take their labor and we combine it into one. You mean capitalists hiring the best designer in town, providing him with measurements that he didn't come up with, providing him with measurements that a different worker came up with, then telling him what to do? Yes, this is not labor by the capitalist. This is labor done by others that is exploited by the capitalist. As in, the measurements were taken by one person, the designer is their own person, all of the designer and those doing the measurements are doing their own labor. The design of the coat being relayed to the designer, the ideal design of from the designer to the business owner, and then that onto the production floor, relaying that message is not labor. So it's the difference between an officer ordering his soldiers to go assault the enemy position and staying behind, and the officer ordering his soldiers to go assault an enemy position and going with them to lead the charge. Yes, that's the difference. That really is the difference. In whether or not management can ever count as labor, that is what makes the difference, Lord Fluffy Art. But then without capitalists, no one would make the best coat. That's not true. People would make the best coat because they want a good coat. The designer would still design the coat. Someone would still want to make the coat, and they would make the coat for the use value, not the exchange value. And if you're good at capitalism, you already have hired people to do everything else for you. That's true. So the reverse is also true here. By equating the different products to each other in exchange as values, they equate their different kinds of labor as human labor. They do this without being aware of it, as in 29. Therefore, when Galliani said value is a relation between persons, he ought to have added a relation concealed beneath a material shell. As in, yes, that is true. I do agree with this in that what we consider as value is often muddled in our brains. Value, therefore, does not have its description branded on its forehead. It rather transforms every product of labor into a social hieroglyphic. Later on, men try to decipher these hieroglyphics, to get behind the secret of their own social product for the characteristic which objects of utility have of being values is as much men's social products as it is their language. Characteristics of objects of utility having use value is a natural thing. The worth of these objects, the value of them is a social product as much as language. And yes, Napoleon was exploiting his soldiers because he didn't go do hand-to-hand combat himself. If I was a general, I'd be on the front lines. You kidding me? What kind of pussy stays back and sends soldiers to fight and die for you? I mean, obviously you try and not die as the leader of the military, the general, but that doesn't mean you don't go in and fight. It's pussy shit. I don't Whoa. Whoa. Holy shit. Sorry, my monitor Everyone just nearly fell onto me because I knocked into my desk too hard. Shit. Oopsie, went onto the wrong screen to do that. Oh, well, if he was out there fighting with the soldiers, then that's a different question. I don't know. Generals aren't doing labor, first of all. You're not producing commodities as a soldier, so that's not labor anyway. That's the thing. You're not producing anything, so your labor is not in that of production. You're not creating you're not imbuing your labor into anything. It's not that you're not doing labor. You are doing labor. You're just not imbuing it into anything. You're not creating a commodity in that case. And therefore, it's irrelevant anyway. So, no, they should be paid. They are doing labor. They're just not creating commodities. And to be fair, like, everyone should just be paid for existing, regardless of whether you, like, what job you do or whatever job you're doing. Universal, just living payments should be a thing. But no, I'm not saying soldiers don't do labor. I misspoke there. It's just they don't create value. They do labor, but they don't create value. He requires the capitalist to organize labor. Yes, he does. The capitalist does organize labor under capitalism, but they don't do any labor. I never knew that until you sent me to read the original Marx books. Good. I'm glad you're reading them. I'm glad you've read them. The thing is, under capitalism, yes, a capitalist organizes labor, but they themselves do not engage in labor, nor do they create any value. Hence why, like, you need to move off of capitalism. However, Marx also believed that capitalism was a required step to take before we could reach socialism, as you can't really move towards socialism under monarchy, under feudalism, under dictatorship, under fascism. So a liberal democracy of capitalism is therefore a good breeding ground for socialist theory and ideology. The capitalist receives profit for organizing labor, not value, profit. So, the belated scientific discovery that products of labor, insofar as they are values, are merely the material expressions of the human labor expended to produce them, marks an epoch in the history of mankind's development, but by no means banishes the semblance of objectivity possessed by social characteristics of labor. Something which is only valid for this particular form of production, the production of commodities, namely the fact that the specific social character of private labor, carried on independently of each other, consists in their equality as human labor, and in the product assumes the form of the existence of value, appears to those caught up in the relations of commodity production, and this is true for both before and after the above-mentioned scientific discovery, to be just as ultimately valid as the fact that the scientific dissection of the air into its component parts left the atmosphere itself unaltered in its physical configuration. As in, people don't think that this matters, but it does. So profit belongs to capitalists because it is his reward. Well, it's not his reward, it's what he's taking. It's theft. He doesn't deserve the profit. The capitalist is stealing the profit of the worker. Stealing, the only way under capitalism, the business owner, the large scale, like factory owner, makes money is through exploitation, by definition. Because again, they don't engage in labor, they organize labor, but they receive profit, whereas the laborers receive wages. What initially concerns producers in the practice when they make an exchange is how much some of the other products that they get for their own, What initially concerns producers in practice when they make an exchange is how much of some other product they get for their own. In what proportions can they have these products exchanged? As soon as these proportions have attained a certain customary stability, they appear to result from the nature of the products, so that, for instance, 1 ton of iron and 2 ounces of gold appear to be equal in value in the same way that a pound of gold and a pound of iron are equal in weight, despite their different physical forms and chemical properties. The value character of the product of labor becomes firmly established only when they act as magnitudes of value. These magnitudes vary continually, independent of the will, foreknowledge, and actions of the exchangers. Their own movements within society has for them the form of a movement made by things, and these things, far from being under their control, in fact control them. Are you streaming tomorrow? It's today. Today's Friday? Probably. Yeah. I don't want to stream on Sunday because it's supposed to be like 100 degrees again, and the last time I streamed when it was 100 degrees, my computer like died, so. Sorry, fucking eyes leaking. Yeah. I think the main issue is profit sharing, overexploitation, labor capture, people working for someone because they need a job to live and can't choose something that's best for them. Well, I mean, that's the point, right? Bulletproof bullet. Under like socialism, you should be able to go and do whatever job you want to do and make enough money to live comfortably just because it's a job, not because you shouldn't. First of all, no one should need to do labor to live. I firmly disagree that like every human on earth is required to produce, I don't know, value, to do labor in order for them to be deserving of the basic needs of life, like food, water, shelter. I think those should just be provided to you because you exist, and that's humane. Whereas someone's need for like a job to live, that also needs to go. People will do jobs no matter what. People will always work. We don't need the profit incentive. People will just work jobs that they actually want to work rather than jobs they need to work. That's the only real difference. Have you got up to the part where he cheats on his boyfriend, Saucy? No, not yet. Marx was a bad boy. Is adventure capitalist a good job, or do you think left-wing tankies want to steal my right to have a job I enjoy? You mean a venture capitalist or adventure capitalist like the game Adventure Capitalist? Because a venture capitalist is not a good job. A venture capitalist should not be a job. Where in any of Marx's materials is there any reference to capitalism being compensated for good organizing of labor, even minimum wage? Well, no, so that's not what Marx writes about. And also stop asking ChatGPT for like knowledge. Read, don't ask ChatGPT. Don't trust the AI to not lie to you. But Adventure Capitalist is actually a decently fun idle game, so is Adventure Communist. But yeah, Venture Capitalist is I think what you meant to say. Those should be illegal. But on the subject of like what Marx writes about, what Marx writes about is not minimum wage, equal wages, is not about equality. It's about freedom. This entire text is written about liberty and freedom, not about equality. The production of commodities must be fully developed before the scientific conviction emerges from experience itself that all the different kinds of private labor, which are carried on independently of each other and yet spontaneously developed branches of the social division of labor, are in a situated all-around dependence on each other, are continually being reduced to the quantitative proportions in which society requires them. This reason for this reduction is that in the midst of the accidental and ever-fluctuating exchange relation between the products, the labor time socially necessary to produce them asserts itself as a regulatory law of nature, in the same way that the law of gravity asserts itself when a person's home collapses on top of him. As in, the amount of time it takes, like labor time it takes to produce this commodity, was going to have an effect on the value, the exchange value of said commodity. Liberty and freedom, what is this Marx guy, a capitalist? It's almost like we're reading a book about capitalism. I read and I cannot find it, he doesn't talk about that. That's not in Marx. He's not talking about compensating the capitalists for good no, I don't even think that there should be a capitalist. Marx doesn't think there should be a capitalist. I don't know where, and again, stop asking ChatGPT your questions. Ask me your questions. Fucking, who gives a shit about ChatGPT? It's not correct more often than it is. Who is the direct opposite of Marx? Barney the purple dinosaur. So, 30, which is, what are we to think of a law which can only assert itself through periodic crises? It is just as a natural law which depends on the lack of awareness of the people who undergo it. Frederick Engels said in 1844, which is true. That's the kind of, one of the larger issues here is that we just kind of don't think about this stuff, so a lot of people don't know this stuff. He's mind broken on the issue of capitalist compensation under, well, I mean, Marxism is theft is always mind broken on one particular issue. You just like, we get past that every stream, and it's just next stream there's another new particular issue, which I don't mind. It's just sometimes it takes a little bit of repetition to learn. All right, now, the determination of the magnitude of value by labor time is therefore a secret hidden under the apparent movements in the relative values of commodities. Its discovery destroys the semblance of the merely accidental determination of the magnitude of value of the products of labor, but by no means abolishes the determination's material form. Essentially, basically, knowing that value is created by labor, the time spent in labor, this gets rid of the idea of like labor, like value just comes out of nowhere. Is my brain that way sometimes? I mean, most people's are. Most people get stuck on something every now and again. I don't tend to get that problem from you. My favorite ABC News presenter retired today. It sucks. The production of surplus value, Marx wrote that whether the material factors or the process are of normal quality or not depends not upon the laborer, but entirely upon the capitalist. Whether the material factors or the process are of normal quality or not. Yes, as in the capitalist owns the factory. The capitalist owns the means of production. So therefore the capitalist is in charge of the material factors of the process and that the quality of it. How else can this quote be interpreted as other than Marx requiring capitalism to exist? No, he's talking about under capitalism. My God, I'm gonna like hit my head into a wall. He's talking about that in the context of under capitalism. This book is not about anything but capitalism. He's explaining how capitalism works. That's what capital is. He's not talking about socialism here. He's not talking about a different system that could be created from it. He's just explaining how it works under capitalism. So does Marx want more McDonald's and less co-op? I'm joshing. I mean, I feel like opposite if I was going to give you a real answer. Less McDonald's, more co-op. Reflection on the form of human life, hence also scientific analysis of these forms, takes the course directly opposite to their real development. Reflection begins post festum, and therefore the result of the process of development ready to hand. The forms which stamp products as commodities, and which are therefore the preliminary requirements for the circulation of the commodities, already possess the fixed qualities of natural forms of social life before man seeks to give an account, not of their historical character, for in his eyes they are immutable, but for the content and meaning. Consequently, it was solely the analysis of the prices of commodities which led to the determination of the magnitude of value, and solely the common expression of all commodities in money which led to the establishment of their character as values. It is, however, precisely this finished form of the world of commodities, the money form, which conceals the social character of private labor and social relations between the individual workers, making those relations appear as relations between material objects instead of revealing them plainly. Yeah, exactly what Lenin said over there. I agree. Oh, post festum means after the feast, after the events reflected on themselves have taken place. I imagine that to be like post-birth, like fetus festum. Guess I need to brush up on Latin. I took 1 year of Latin in 9th grade. Really should brush up on that. Now then, sorry, my throat's getting dry. It's really fucking hot today. If I state that coats or boots stand in relation to linen because the latter is the universal incarnation of abstract human labor, the absurdity of the statement is self-evident. Nevertheless, when the producers of the coats and boots bring these commodities into relation with linen or with gold or silver, this makes no difference here, as the universal equivalent, the relation between their own private labor and the collective labor of society appears to them exactly this absurd form. Who learns Latin? Gonna be a priest or something? It's useful in like understanding words. We talk about history, decent amount. You need to understand some amount of Latin. So under capitalism, capitalist is required to organize the means of production. Well, it's because they own the means of production. Under capitalism, there's nothing that says the capitalist is required to organize the means of production, but they own the means of production and they use it for profit, so therefore they will organize them. It's just the natural next step for it. So what happens in socialism to someone doing capitalism? They get thrown in the hole. I know, but like, I'm telling you what I think of that. I'm telling you my reading of this quote that you gave me. What Marx is saying here, whether the material forces or the process are of normal quality or not, depends not on the laborer, but entirely on the capitalist. This is because the capitalist owns the means of production and therefore are in charge of the quality of the means of production. The laborer is still the one doing the labor and still the one making the value. The capitalist in this scenario is only necessary because they own the means of production. If they didn't own the means of production, they wouldn't be the capitalist. If the workers own the means of production, it wouldn't be capitalism. The categories of bourgeois economics consist precisely of forms of this kind. They are forms of thought which are socially valid and therefore objective for the relation of production belonging to this historically determined mode of social production, commodity production. The whole mystery of commodities, all the magic and the necromancy that surrounds the products of labor, Jesus, okay, we're gonna use necromancy in this, on the basis of commodity production vanishes as soon as we come to other forms of production. As political economists are fond of Robinson Crusoe's stories, 31. Even Ricardo has his Robinson Crusoe stories. Ricardo makes his primitive fisherman and primitive hunter into owners of commodities who immediately exchange their fish and game in proportion to the labor time, which is materialized in these exchange values. On this occasion, he slips into the anarchism of allowing the primitive fisherman and the hunter to calculate the value of their implements in accordance to the with the annuity tables used on the London Stock Exchange in 1817. Apart from bourgeois society, the parallelograms of Mr. Owens seems to have always been the only form of society. Seems to have been the only form of society, rather, not always. Why is my eye leaking? That's really fucking annoying. Marx says without capitalism contributions, there would not be surplus value. He requires capitalists to do stuff for the surplus value to occur. Well, I mean, to be fair, Marx also thinks that like capitalism is a required step to reach socialism, but also what are you defining as, define me what you are using as surplus value, and then we can go from there. Wait, so I can collab with Snoop Dogg under socialism? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you should. But wait, what would happen to content creators and platforms under socialism? Well, the platforms would not, like Twitch shouldn't exist, not in the manner that it does, not for profit. If you want to create these platforms, then they can exist. Streamers can exist. That's still a job. It's just not any more labor than anyone else's labor. Yes, we're reading Marx. Marxism is theft, if you would allow me to. I'm asking you to define surplus labor in the context that you're using, because, you know, I have a feeling that you're misunderstanding the way that Marx is using it based on the last two things that you've written. They would keep their jobs unless they run out of stuff to talk about or unless they want to do something else. Now, let us first look at Robinson on his island. Undemanding though he is by nature, he still has needs to satisfy and must therefore perform useful labor of various kinds. He must make tools, knock together furniture, tame llamas, fish, hunt, and so on. Of his prayers and the like, we take no account here, since our friend takes pleasures in them and sees them as recreation. Despite the diversity of his productive functions, he knows that they are only different forms of activity of one and the same Robinson, hence only different modes of human labor. Necessity itself compels him to divide his time with precision between his different functions. Would prostitution be legal under socialism? Yes, and it should be legal now. I mean, it's legal depending on what state you live in, but yeah. But I'm not too sure why you would need that too. Yeah. People can be sex workers for fun. Like, people do that for fun. It would be legal. You would have less available, like, sex workers to work with because, you know, people would do other jobs that they would rather do. Something tells me they wouldn't run out of stuff. Wouldn't humans just default to using ration supplies from the government as currency? I mean, that implies the existence of a government. And I mean, before this, there was still, like, before we created money, up until this point, like really up until like 10 pages ago, we hadn't had money yet. We just got to the creation of a commodity that can be exchanged with every other commodity. Prior to money, it was just different commodities you would exchange. I personally think prostitution needs to exist to prevent incels from existing. Well, I mean, it should exist. It just will have less sex workers if people don't need sex work. She's an anarchist. Don't listen to her. I'm not an anarchist. I'm a libertarian socialist. I just like some anarchist beliefs. He says surplus value is generated when value of the product has higher value above necessary labor. So wages cost, meaning capitalist is required to do stuff for surplus value, and then attributes all of the surplus value to work of the workers, none to the capitalist. Under that definition, that's true. Any value that's created above the value of necessary labor that is done by the workers is value that's created by the workers, none by the capitalist. The surplus value is not really even all that relevant here. It's just value. She is the anarchia mama. Okay, look, anarchism has some good ideas, all right? You just can't be black and white with anything. That's the thing. Nothing is black and white. Labeling like political ideology is like throwing darts at a board. Like, we looked at this the other day. Look at how many fucking forms of anarchism there are. Wait till let me show you some like other shit. Look at, first of all, there's this many forms of anarchism. But inside this, there's also all of these. Go to communism. All of these are communism, or rather defined as. None of these, like, not a lot of these I wouldn't define as communism. You go to corporatism. These are all different corporatism examples. Democracy. It's difficult to just throw a dart and land on a political ideology. And art, sex worker, not prostitute. It's just like a ruder way of saying the same thing. How would you divide little anarcho city states and defend themselves from Mexico? Oh my God, do you really want to go into this now, or do you want to save it for when you debate me? Genuine question. We can go into it now, but then we have to stop with Marx. Or you can save this for when you're on stream and we're talking about it. By the way, like, again, I did say yesterday that I'm not set in stone on that idea. I'm willing to move some things. Give me a better idea. And yes, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, Art. Oh, yeah, you wanted to come on stream, didn't you? I forgot. Yeah, so I'll talk to Art about this tomorrow. And yeah, owned, exactly. They can't defend themselves. The country with more guns than people, if decentralized and happy and was invaded by a foreign power, wouldn't just start killing everybody that's, you know, not in their community. I don't necessarily believe that. Whether or not we could like stop an invasion of the United States, I mean, I still think that no country could manage to do that successfully. Mexico might occupy a couple like southern like city state-esque things, sure, but like I don't even think they'd manage that. We're Americans. We have a lot of guns and we're insane. And this would be in a hypothetical scenario of a stateless society. So basically stuff that capitalism is required to do, as Marx writes, has zero value in Marxism. Well, I mean, okay, when you say Marxism, you're getting too complex here. Like that Marxism is, you know, actually, no, we're reading Marx, so this is Marxist ideology. So zero value in Marxism, but Marx says capitalists are required to do things still to produce surplus value. Where does he say surplus value is required? I mean, we haven't gotten there yet. You're clearly well ahead of where we're reading, and you don't have the patience to wait until we get there, but give me the page number. Why is surplus value required? The quote that you've told me is how surplus value comes about, not why it's necessary. The quote that you sent me is Marx says surplus value is generated when when values of the product has a higher value above necessary labor, so wages cost, meaning capitalist is required to do stuff for surplus value to occur. And then he attributes all of that surplus value to work of the workers, none to the capitalists. None of this is explaining to me why you think surplus value needs to exist. No matter what arguments of responsibility MLs make over anarchists, they still go out of their way to adopt our aesthetic value. That's true. I mean, you can jump in and like mediate I'm not sure we're gonna need a mediator, but like, yeah, you can be the mod tomorrow. Well, after stream, we'll set this up, or rather, while I'm playing Civ, we'll set this up. Well, we haven't even defined surplus value yet. Like, we're not there yet. I'm asking you why you think it's necessary. I'm not saying I don't think it's necessary. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm asking a question. Yeah, well, once the timer runs out for Marx, I'm playing Civ. Got an hour and 17 minutes left of Marx, and then we can play some games. I haven't played a game on this computer yet. I'm really fucking excited. So, his stock book contains a catalog of useful objects he possesses, of the various operations necessary for their production, and finally of the labor time that specific quantities of these products have on average cost him. All the relations between Robinson and these objects that form his self-created wealth are here so simple, transparent that even Mr. Sedley Taylor could understand them, which seems like a burn, and yet those relations contain all the essential determinants of value. Who is you? The original German has here Herr M. Wirth, chosen by Marx as a run-of-the-mill vulgar economist propagandist familiar to German readers. Engels introduced Mr. Sedley Taylor, a Cambridge don against whom he polemicized in the preface. I see. Where were we? Lost my straw. There we go. Now, let us transport ourselves from Robinson's Island, bathed in the light, to medieval Europe, shrouded in darkness. Here, instead of the independent man, we find everyone dependent. Serfs, lords, vassals, suzerains, laymen, clerics. Personal dependence characterize the social relations of material production as much as it does the other spheres of life based on that production. But precisely because relations of personal dependence form the given social foundations, there is no need for labor and its products to assume a fantastic form different from their reality. They take the shape in the transactions of society of services in kinds of payment in kind. The natural kind of labor, its particularity, and not as in a society based on commodity production, its universality, is here its immediate social form. The corvée can be measured by time just as well as the labor which produces the commodities. But every serf knows that what he expends in the service of his lord is a specific quantity of his own personal labor power. The tithe owed to the priest is more clearly apparent than his blessing. Whatever we may think then of the different roles in which men confront each other in such a society, the social relations between the individuals in their performance of labor appears at all events as their own personal relations and are not disguised as social relations between the products of labor. This would be under medieval European society. There are more of us on Earth, so we want to use our resources more efficiently, and that surplus value allows us to have good lives today. But no, I disagree with that framing entirely. That's a very capitalist framing. You don't need surplus value to do that. Labor power, I understand the capitalist is required to do stuff like provide material. That's not what the capitalist does. That's not, they don't provide the worker with materials to increase labor power. They provide the worker with base materials to create the commodities. They upgrade the means of production to increase productivity, but none of this is labor. None of this is worth anything. This is all just, them making profit. It'd be like a collection of ideas with the premise on what will be done generally. If you guys are wondering what Marxism-Leninism is, here, I'll explain. Let's let Chomsky explain, just real quick. Sorry, this is still Marx, at least partially.
The other people who are here tonight are deeply indebted to your work. It's been absolutely essential in helping us.
This is specifically on Leninism, or rather Marxism-Leninism.
Kind of garbage that we're faced with every day when we try to figure out what's going on in the world. But I think there's also, if I can continue, I think there is also a problem in the analysis that I've seen in your works and that you presented tonight, in the sense that I think we can tend to lose the forest for the trees, that you present so many, astonishing details about what is wrong with the system and about what is wrong with the media, that we can tend to lose sight of what I think the really key question is, which is, why is this control necessary in the first place? And I would submit, at least, that I think it's because there's I got a minute and a half, I swear to God, it's no longer. It's because there's antagonistic interests involved. They didn't talk about milkmaids and dairy maids and spinsters and laborers in the 17th century for no reason. It was because they were the working class. And what we see today in this country, I think, is, quite frankly, let's speak bluntly, a ruling class which tries to control a working class population. And that's what it's about, is holding on to that power. If that's the case, then it seems like to me the question that we face is how to organize to change that system, to challenge capitalism. And I think in that effort,
this is an excellent speaker asking this question, by the way. God damn, I wish I could speak that well.
A disservice to your listeners and to the people who respect your work when you equate Lenin with Stalinism as blithely as you did tonight. I say that, and I think it's also important to point out that that is an unquestioned assumption and also an easy applause getter we saw that you share with the mainstream media. And I think if it were actually that simple, the horrific kinds of measures that even bourgeois historians describe as a counter-revolution under Stalin would not have been necessary if they were all the same to begin with. Now, in short, to sum up, the situation that you have outlined tonight, I think, is extremely serious, and I think it's important that we all take it seriously.
Party of professional revolutionaries dedicated to overthrowing society we live in. It's better than a misguided group of workers who don't know which direction to move with ties pushes them in all directions. Yes, but there's different methods of changing that structure. So you make a selection of what to read. No, we're reading all of Marx. We're off topic. What to discuss on streams, etc. But sure, your selections have direct impact on the value of your stream to your viewers, and you're saying that those are decisions, not your actions, just to say. No, but because I'm the streamer. I'm the one doing the labor and making the decisions. This is me having control over the means of production. You're like, Marxism is theft. What you just said here only makes sense if there was someone else streaming and I was telling them what to stream.
seriously. What we're talking about is literally the fate of millions of lives around the world, particularly in the international politics that you described. That being the case, then I think we need a full and a serious and
Your
a
labor creates value, not your actions. There's a difference.
fair discussion of various different alternatives, not just talking about the horrors of capitalism, but actually how to change it to end this stuff once and for all.
Well, I think you made, yeah.
You paying attention? Because, that was prelude.
I think, well, there's several questions there. One is about the discussion of the United States, and I think what I said is approximately what you said, except I didn't use some of that rhetoric. Which I don't think is particularly helpful, to tell you the truth, either analytically or to understand or whatever, but it's the same picture.
Well, to be fair, I said yesterday that I think Lenin would have been better if, A, they didn't do state, like capitalism, they didn't do market socialism, rather, and Trotsky wasn't there. If Trotsky just never existed and they didn't do market socialism, then Lenin would have ended up better, and Stalin may not have ever happened. He might still have been the guy. He just might not have been a fascist.
John Jay had it straight. The people who own the country ought to govern it, and the people who own the country have basically.
No, I wouldn't have done any labor if I directed somebody else. Like if someone else was the streamer and I stood behind them and told them what to do and they did it, and then I did not do any labor.
Now are a network of corporations and conglomerates and banks and so on. They ought to govern it, and the way they do it is by the methods we've described. Now, as far as the Soviet Union is concerned, I didn't happen to talk about it tonight, but I've written about this topic. I haven't just made the charge. I've written about it and explained why I think it's true.
No, I wouldn't have done any labor if I directed somebody else. Like if someone else was the streamer and I stood behind them and told them what to do and they did it, and then I did not do any labor.
Once he was charged in the 1930s corporations and with agreeing with the fascists,
this is
they
true.
ought to govern it, and the way they do it is by the
consistently
methods we've described. Now, as far as the Soviet Union is concerned, I didn't happen to talk about it tonight, but I've written about this topic. I haven't just made the charge. I've written about it and explained why I think it's true. The people who own the country have basically.
No, I wouldn't have done any labor if I directed somebody else. Like if someone else was the streamer and I stood behind them and told them what to do and they did it, and then I did not do any labor.
Now are a network of corporations and the people who own the country have basically.
No, I wouldn't have done any labor if I directed somebody else. Like if someone else was the streamer and I stood behind them and told them what to do and they did it, and then I did not do any labor.
Now are a network of corporations and conglomerates and banks and so on. They ought to govern it, and the way they do it is by the methods we've described. Now, as far as the Soviet Union is concerned, I didn't happen to talk about it tonight, but I've
And is the reason that Lenin killed all the anarchists. Stalin was a fascist. Lenin was not.
happened to say it for different reasons.
Come on, Lenin.
So the question is about the Soviet Union, and particularly about Lenin. So what was Leninism? Well, here we have to look at the facts. Now, you look at the facts, I think here's what you find.
I mean, to be fair, if you guys gave me like fascistic control of the planet for a year and I got full power, I'd be worse than Stalin. But your lives would also end up better in the end. Like, I would be worse than Stalin via public perception, not by actual action. Although, like, I mean, if we're talking about the amount of people who died under Stalin, you'd probably get some of that too. It's just your lives would be significantly better afterward. And you know what? My way of getting around this, if you take fascistic power, you will keep it. In a year, execute me in the end. Let me fix everything. I mean, a lot of anarchists talk about violent revolution too. Granted, they're typically on drugs when they do, but still true. That's the thing. Online communists and online anarchists are a red flag, even to me as a socialist, just until I have to like, once I talk to them a little bit and I realize either they're the crazy ones that actually like don't pay any attention to reality, or the ones that have no interest in like gaining power and actually achieving anything. And then there's like the actual ones. Does criticizing Stalin make that not true? Yeah, I agree. Does that make that not true, Lenin? That is a straw man. That's definitionally a straw man argument. Nice catch.
Was a right-wing deviation of the socialist movement, and he was so regarded. He was regarded as that by the Marxists, by the mainstream Marxists.
This is Lenin.
We've forgotten who the mainstream Marxists were because they lost, and you only remember the guys who won. But if you go back to that period, the mainstream Marxists were people like, for example, Anton Pannekoek, who was head of education for the Marxist movement, and he's one of the people who Lenin later denounced as an infantile leftist.
They were the libertarian socialists. They were the anarchists. These are the people that Lenin killed because Trotsky convinced him to. There is a big chance they're just anti-centrist trying to make a strong impression. That's also true.
But he was one of the leading
internet.
Intellectuals of the actual Marxist movement. Rosa Luxemburg was another mainstream Marxist.
Hey,
and there were
Rosa Luxemburg.
And they were very critical. In fact, Trotsky was one up until 1917. They were all very critical of Leninism because of this.
Trotsky pretended to be one. The war economy was necessary. He needed to emphasize the growth of heavy industry, at least at the start of the leadership. That I won't argue. I don't like. This was during World War II, and then the Cold War. Like, I understand the war economy for the state in that point, but the issues with the USSR under Stalin are issues that existed pre-Stalin. They exist because of Lenin and Trotsky and because of how their system was implemented.
They regarded as this opportunistic vanguard. They were very critical. In fact, Trotsky was one up until 1917. They were all very critical of Leninism because of this, what they regarded as this opportunistic vanguardism. The idea that
God,
the
we're gonna have to listen
radical
to this again, but let me,
intelligentsia.
one more time. Art, keeping it after World War II makes perfect sense because Cold War. But again, pay attention to this. You asked me what Leninism is, or you asked Lenin what Leninism is, so we're going to listen to Chomsky explain it. And by the way, this is important. Like, this is the critical part that we're at.
They regarded as this opportunistic vanguardism. The idea that the radical intelligentsia were going to exploit popular
this is a straw man argument. Shut the fuck up.
Movements to seize state power and then to use that state power to whip the population into the society that they chose. Now, that was quite inconsistent with Marxism as understood by the mainstream sort of, I'd say, left Marxists. From this point of view, Bolshevism was a right-wing deviation. Trotsky made the same points up till 1917. Now, when Lenin came back to Russia in April 1917, he took a different line, quite a different line from the one he'd had in the past. You take a look at Lenin's work, it shifted character in April 17. In April 1917, it became kind of libertarian. That's when he came out with the April Theses, and that's when he wrote State and Democracy. It came out a year later, but that's when it was written. And these were State and Revolution. These were basically libertarian works. They were very much more in the mainstream of
as in like what the ideology that I expressed. That's the direction they leaned prior to taking power. Left
libertarian socialism from sort of this range that goes from anarchism over to left Marxism of the Pannekoek-Luxemburg variety. And he talked about Soviets and the need for, a workers' organization and so on. In fact, came really closer to what the essence of socialism was always understood to be. After all, the core of socialism was understood to be workers' control over production. That was the core. It's where you begin with. Then you go on to other things. But the beginning is control by the workers over production. That's where it begins.
By the way, this is like the key point in all of this with Leninism that I disagree with you, Comrade Lenin, on with the Vanguard Party is the same thing that the libertarian socialists in 1917 believed as well, especially after losing to the Bolsheviks, in that a dictatorship of the proletariat is just another class structure. It just recreates class structure in a different form.
Then Lenin took power in October 1917 in what's called a revolution, but in my view ought to be called a coup. And things followed that coup, or revolution, if you want to call it that. One of the things that followed it was the immediate
orbiters. That's true, honestly.
To destroy the Soviets and the factory councils. Those were some of that coup. or revolution, if you want to call it that. One of the things that followed it was the immediate moves to destroy the Soviets and the factory councils. Those were some of the first moves of Lenin and Trotsky after they took, Trotsky joined at
Literally
that point,
first moves.
after they took state power. In fact, if you look at
It is like a violent revolution in which the proletariat take the means of production by force. Again, listen to what happened here.
Trotsky after they took, Trotsky
The
joined
first
at
moves.
that point, after they took state power. In fact, if you look at what Lenin wrote after that period, or did, you'll find it's a reversion to the earlier position. This sort of left deviation is that, a deviation. You could ask why. In my view, it was just opportunistic. He knew that in order to gain power, he was going to have to go along with the popular currents that were developing, which were in fact spontaneous and libertarian and socialist, as most popular movements have been, in fact, since the 17th century. And being an astute politician, which he was, he sort of went along with that and talked the line that the people wanted to hear. It's just like when an American politician goes somewhere and his pollsters tell him, say so-and-so, and he says it, doesn't mean he believes it. And I think Lenin was doing the same thing without polls. In any event, whatever the interpretation is, when he took power, he reverted to the former vanguardism and moved at once to eliminate the organs of workers' control. Now that meant he was moving to destroy socialism, if socialism has as its core workers' control over production.
This is a direct result of power, of access to capital, because again, without getting rid of capital, you will always have the capital class, and then immediately reverting to being anti-labor to maintain power. Now, part of this is Trotsky, yes, but also Lenin did this. Why? He had good ideas beforehand. He had ideas like me beforehand. What caused this shift? It was money. It was power. Corruption. And that's basically Leninism.
The Soviets and the factory councils were instruments of workers' control. And same, you could say they're defective instruments, they worked out better and so on, yeah, no doubt. But they were the instruments that had been developed in the course of popular struggle to implement basically workers' control, and those were the first things to go. By early 1918, it's still really before the Civil War set in, Lenin's view was pretty clearly expressed. It was the view that both he and Trotsky took the position that what you need is what Trotsky called a labor army, which is submissive to the control of a single leader.
Literally, that's just fascism. Again, that's what Trotsky was saying. It was the view
position that
both he and Trotsky took the position
you need is what Trotsky called a labor army, which is submissive to the control of a single leader.
Submissive to the control of a single leader. That's fascism. I trust Noam Chomsky on this. Again, there's nothing here that I disagree with. If you have a counter for this, I'd love to see it, but this is my view of what happened. This is what I viewed as what happened before.
I said modern, progress and development and socialism requires that the mass of the population
that's why you have to think for yourself.
Subordinate themselves to a single leader in a disciplined workforce. Well, that has absolutely nothing to do with socialism. In fact, it's the exact opposite of it, and was criticized for that by in a spirit of some solidarity, because the revolutionary forces were still operative. He was criticized for that by people like Rosa Luxemburg and by Pannekoek and Gorter and the other mainstream sort of left Marxists, and I think they were right. It seems to me that, and then it just goes on from there. I mean,
sorry,
Lenin
bro, that's life.
Reconstructed the czarist systems of oppression often more efficiently, Cheka, KGB, and other techniques of control and oppression. I think from that point on, there was nothing remotely like socialism in the Soviet Union. I think it wasn't.
Like, going back to what we heard Chomsky say yesterday that I completely agree with, is that any system of authority, oppression, control has to prove its legitimacy or be dismantled. They have to show that they are a legitimate form of control and that they should exist. Otherwise, they shouldn't exist. Okay, so Marxism is theft. Okay, so the top heart surgeon in the world who would be on a call with someone in Ukraine and direct them to do what to do because they cannot be there physically. Basically, like you sitting behind someone and telling them what to do on stream. That top surgeon would not contribute to the success of. Well, so that's A, first of all, nothing to do with surplus value. B, entirely different. The doctor calling the doctor in Ukraine, telling him what to do that he can't do in order to save someone's life is A, not creating value. It's not creating a commodity. It doesn't fit in with this system of like economics that we're talking about. This is not creating value. But also comparing this to like me standing behind a streamer telling them what to stream is also not the same. No, because value is a product of labor that is inside a commodity. It has worth. Worth and value are different. This has worth, not value. And that's why I called it a straw man, by the way, is because it had like nothing to do with surplus value. So we're talking about the creation of labor surplus. We were talking about the creation of surplus value, not labor surplus, but whatever. What other point am I making other than the point we discussed, which is the creation of labor surplus? We were talking about surplus value, not labor surplus. But also that analogy doesn't fit in at all. The outcome is to save someone's life in this context. Yes, that has worth, not value. You're confusing the definitions of worth and value. Worth is innate. It is the objective value in something. It is not the exchange value. Value is exchange. It's trade. It's commodities. Value only exists in the context of exchange. Right. And am I allowed to turn off my thinking centers? And if so, when am I allowed to do that? You're allowed to turn off your thinking centers whenever the hell you want. Just like, listen to think about when you're doing this. You don't want to turn off your thinking centers when you're listening to someone telling you something. You want to turn your thinking centers off when you're in your room alone playing video games, or you're going to bed or something, or watching TV. What is worth and what is value in retard monkey PS4 median terms? Worth is just what you have. Rocks, iron ore. You pick up the rock, this has worth. You take that iron ore, you make steel out of it. Right? You've used that use value, you've added labor, you've made steel, and now you are trying to sell this steel. The steel has value. The iron had worth. That's the difference. One is consistent with the actual resource materials that just exist, while the other is a creation based on exchange value and labor in addition to it. So life has worth but not value. Definitionally, yes. Now, colloquially, we use these words interchangeably. If you said life has worth but not value outside of this context, someone would not you would be misunderstood, because we're talking about in the context of literal financial systems. Value only exists in a trade relation. So I guess a life can have a value if you're trading slaves, but not otherwise. You have to trade for value. So worth is the use value of a product. It's a natural resource was just an example. Worth is not necessarily a natural resource. Worth is something that's innately tied to that thing. It is part of it. It's intrinsic to it. Whereas value has to be created. Corn that grows has worth. Corn that is grown and sold has value. If I make myself a necklace, I've put labor into it, in fact, right? I've made myself a necklace. This is worth, not value. If I've made 5 necklaces and I'm selling 3 of them, then I'm creating value. If right now I'm streaming, right? I'm not making any money, so no value. There's only worth here. I suppose. Why do you have to like use that as an example? That's so creepy. Top surgeon's time has value because you have to pay for his time, in my view, because tons of other people would have. Well, if the surgeon is doing surgery, then they're doing labor. But they're not creating a commodity. Therefore, they're not creating value. The surgeon's time has value to it, but that's because of the exchange relationship between the business owner and the laborer. The surgeon is the laborer in this case. That's where the value comes from, is from above the surgeon. Yeah, that's not value. And again, that's not commodities. I don't know why you're stuck on this. It has no relation to what we're talking about. This is not commodities. You're so far ahead of like the class, mate. Like, you need to stop reading ahead. Read with the class. Where were we? The natural form of labor, its particularity, actually, no, we read all that actually. We're down here. For example, of labor in common, i.e. directly associated labor, we do not need to go back to spontaneously developed forms which we find at the threshold of the history of all civilized peoples, as in a ridiculous notion has spread abroad recently that communal property in its natural spontaneous form is specifically Slav, indeed exclusively Russian. In fact, it is the primitive form that we can prove to have existed among Romans, Teutons, Celts, and which indeed still exists to this day in India in a whole range of diverse patterns, albeit sometimes only as remnants. A more exact study of the Asiatic and specifically of the Indian form of communal property would indicate that way in which different forms of spontaneous primitive communal property give rise to different forms of dissolution. Thus, the different different original types of Roman and Germanic private property can be deduced from the different forms of Indian communal property. Okay, now where were we? Back up here. We have one nearer to hand in the patriarchal rural industry of a peasant family which produces corn, cattle, yarn, linen, and clothing for its own use. These things confront the family as so many products of its collective labor, but they do not confront each other as commodities. The different kinds of labor which create these products, such as tilling the fields, tending to the cattle, spinning, weaving, making clothes, are already in their natural form social functions, for they are functions of the family, which just as much as a society is based on commodity production, possesses its own spontaneously developed division of labor, the division of labor within the family and the labor time expended by individual family members of the family are regulated by differences of sex and age as well as seasonal variations in natural conditions of labor. The fact that the expenditure of the individual's labor power is measured by duration appears here by its very nature as a social characteristic of labor itself, because the individual labor powers by their very nature act only as instruments of the joint labor power of the family. So if I own a computer, it has worth. But if I make another, if you own a computer, you bought it for value. If you make a computer, it has worth from scratch. If you make one and sell it, then it has value. Yes. If you are doing labor and creating commodities for your own use, they're not commodities, they're use values. Therefore, you're not creating value, you're creating worth. As in this family that Marx just used the example of, right? That we just read. They are not creating values. This peasant family, which produces corn, cattle, yarn, and linen for clothing for its own use, they're creating use values. Now, they're doing labor, and the labor is embodied in this corn, cattle, and yarn, and linen, and clothing that they make, but because it's not being sold, it's not being exchanged, it's not producing a value. And that surgeon's time has no value, just worth, because his contribution ends up saving someone's life, because the human's life has only worth, not value. Thus, the surgeon's time only has worth instead of value. Yes, value is an exchange. The first place I read Marx books was a library in a southern state. The librarians gave me odd looks. I was a boy, child, comprehension was good. I read first couple hundred pages of Das Kapital. Well, good for you, nice job. Is transportation worth or value? As in like, define transportation, like public transportation or like cars? Because again, the context depends. If we're talking about like manufacturing and selling of vehicles, that's value, it's not worth. If we're talking about the state paying for buses, then that's worth, not value. Or actually, I suppose it depends on whether or not you have to pay for the bus, and whether or not, you know, the state is making any money off of it. But if they're not, like, because I don't know, is it considered value if they're making a loss? That's my question. For the example of, let's say, a city, New York City with its subways, right? If New York funds its subways entirely publicly, is it creating value or is it creating worth? Well, do people A, pay to get on the subway? Does the amount that they pay just cover like cost to operate, or does it produce profit? Does it produce a loss? I feel like if it produces a profit or a loss, I'd be willing to say value. Like, does transporting food from a farm to a supermarket, does it have value or worth? That does have value. You get paid to do this and it's an exchange. You're exchanging, like, they're paying you in a commodity to do labor. That's an exchange. Money is a commodity. If you're getting paid to do something, then you're doing labor, then you are producing value in this context. Because even though you're not creating a commodity, what you're doing is you're still part of the network of commodity production and sale. You're just a link in that chain. Whether or not, like, you don't have to create the commodity for it to be value. You just have to be paid for labor. And you have to have labor be done in the context of the creation and selling of commodities, the creation and exchange of commodities. That's why, like, the doctor in Ukraine, the doctor calling the doctor in Ukraine and instructing him on surgery is not creating value, he's creating worth by saving the life, because he's not engaging in any form of commodity production or exchange, whereas the transportation of food from the farm to the supermarket is. Now, you can argue that, and I mean, I'm sure there are scholars that do, but by my understanding of the definitions of worth and value, that's how I would define it. So human life has, well, actually, not necessarily true. Human life intrinsically only has worth, not value, but value comes from capitalism using human life to produce profit. Therefore, value can then be assigned to people based on the amount of labor they're able to do and profit that they're able to produce. So under, like, a free society, humans would not have value, they would only have worth. Under capitalism, you have value and worth. No, the doctor should absolutely be compensated for it. I mean, to be fair, like, everyone should just be paid enough anyway. Like, I don't necessarily think the doctor should be paid more than, I don't know, the librarian through taxes, through the state. What do you mean for what? They're paid for doing their job. You don't need to produce value to get paid. I'm not a capitalist. Yeah, but that's okay. So you're asking me under capitalism, not under, like, ideal. Under capitalism, technically, yes. And to be fair, if the people in charge could make it so that you work for free, they would. What if I buy something and sell it to someone after the price has gone up? That is still not exchange value, I believe. I feel like we covered that earlier in this. Yeah, you're not doing labor in that at the very least. Whether you're, like, producing value, I guess, yes, but you're not doing any labor, Lord Fluffy Art. I think people should be paid the state for existing and nothing else. I think the state should pay you every month enough money that you could live without a job. Not comfortably, but like enough. For no reason, for nothing. And also true, Capper, Zaffer, Flaffer, Laffer. God, I love saying your name. Investing and speculation should be illegal in the way that they are. I don't believe that like stocks should exist. Now you can invest in a company, but you shouldn't expect a profit from it. That's the thing. You can do investments, but you should not expect return on investments. Aside from that, investment should be illegal. No investing for profit. Well, I didn't say, well, so I said my ideal is a stateless society, but I also said that that's not likely in my lifetime. We work with what we have. I misunderstood Marxism as Steph's question over there before. Nobody but the state invest under like socialism, then yes, nobody but the state invests. Although I would, no, actually, no. I don't actually want socialism in a state-controlled sense that much. Not in that only the state can invest. I think you can invest, you just will never gain a profit from your investment. You can invest in a company because you want to. Considering how my state invests, this would mean a total collapse of society within a decade. Well, I mean, that's because the people who run your state are retards. This, like, us transitioning from our current system to a system that I consider even remotely, like, functional would require removing everybody in power. And no, it doesn't sound like Slovenia. Now, where were we? The distribution of labor within the family and the labor time expended by individual, we already read that bit, sorry. Down to here. Oh my God. Let us finally imagine for a change an association of free man working with the means of production held in common, expending their many different forms of labor power in self-awareness as a single social labor force. All the characteristics of Robinson's labor are repeated here, but with the difference that they are social instead of individual. All of Robinson's products were exclusively the result of his own personal labor, and they were therefore directly objects of utility for him personally. The total product of our imagined association is a social product. One part of this product serves as a fresh means of production, and serves as fresh means of production and remains social. But another part is consumed by the members of the association as a means of subsistence. This part must therefore be divided amongst them. This way the division is made will vary with particular kinds of social organization and production and corresponding levels of societal development by the producers. We shall assume, but only for the sake of a parallel with the production of commodities, that the share of each individual producer in the means of subsistence is determined by his labor time. Labor time would in that case play a double part in this appropriationment in accordance with the definite social plan, maintains the correct proportions between different functions of labor and various needs of the associations. As in here, social labor, when you take labor out of individual, like one to yourself, you're creating utilities for yourself to use and you make it social. This does not necessarily mean that you need like exchange of commodities in the manner that we do now. The subsistence use based on labor time is kind of like that wouldn't work anymore. That's outdated shit. But the rest of this kind of still makes sense. Why state should pay doctors anything? Why should you not be paid for existing? Why do you think you need to earn the right to live and eat and drink water? Why do you think that you need to generate value as a human? Would you get your money back for investing in it? Probably not. The appropriation, thank you. The investment wouldn't be for you to get money back. The investment would be for you to engage in helping this company grow. Buying low and selling high is exploitation of workers, yes. Also, like, you wouldn't be able to do that in the context of we sell things for at cost. State pushes e-cars. E-cars are a total disaster and the market is collapsing. If the state would run an investment, it would have destroyed the car industry and trillions of... okay, first of all, e-cars are like a growing industry, not a total disaster. The market is not collapsing. The American market's collapsing. It's just because the Chinese can produce them for cheaper. But also, that was done stupidly by the state as well. And also protectionist policies like added into this, like there's so much into that example that doesn't track. Can I buy low and sell high in a video game? Yeah, you can do whatever you want in a video game. Also, like right now you can do whatever you want. Living under capitalism, it is not unethical nor is it immoral to engage with the systems of capitalism if your end goal is to remove yourself from the system of capitalism, or you work towards bettering society with what you gain from it. You're allowed to engage in the capitalist systems if we live in capitalism. It's not immoral. That's why I say watch The Good Place, because there's no way to live morally. Mercedes, Porsche are like literally shit companies when it comes to making e-cars. They don't make e-cars. German car manufacturers are dying because of Chinese cheap imports of electric vehicles. Tesla sells less cars because Tesla cars are made shitty. No one's doing a forced e-car shift. I don't know where you're getting that from. There is no forced e-car shift. In America? Also, by the way, you know, like the electric vehicles things is also like a scam, right? You know, we pretend that electric vehicles are better for the environment. However, they require us to mine for rare earth minerals, which are just as damaging to the environment as us mining for, like, you know, oil and shit. I'm for universal basic income to be paid just for existing. This is not a capitalist idea. Nope. I disagree. You don't need to generate surplus value for a UBI fund. In communism, first of all, I'm not a communist. Second of all, UBI fund exists in a society if it exists in a society. It's a community-focused thing. So basically, use capitalism to become better capitalist than the capitalist, then use your capitalism to abolish capital and capitalism? No. Use capitalism to not die and use the time that you have under capitalism to try and, I don't know, remove capitalism. Not become a better capitalist than the capitalist, then use your capital to abolish capital. That's never going to happen. All government pay thousands of dollars to buy e-cars. Oh, thousands of dollars from the government? Oh my, nothing. EU on average pays 5 to 10K subsidies to buy e-cars. Yeah, but in Europe, that's wasted because Europe's electric car industry is dead because they can't produce the cars cheaper than China can. China makes better and cheaper electric cars. And California's not banning them from being sold after 2030. I'm pretty sure they're just banning them from being manufactured in California after 2030. Example, WA state voted to ease off of some taxes on e-vehicle registration, but old cars are everywhere, plentiful secondhand, tens of thousands. I watched shipfuls of carbon cars come into port. Yeah, no, this is bullshit. There is no like push to remove regular cars. In fact, like getting rid of e-cars is a much bigger push now. Companies use that money to get cheap cars, and that's why the sales were high. Now, no, that's not why. The sales were high because the Chinese weren't flooding your market with cheap electric vehicles that are better than the ones that Europe makes. Now, you can't afford, now no one in Europe wants to make them because no one will buy them. Elon Musk is rich from harvesting government subsidies. I do agree with that. My cat is cute, right? Oh, shit. Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. Guys. I promise you, there is no push to ban non-e-cars. It's ridiculous to think that there is like an organized push in the Western world to switch to electric vehicles and away from carbon vehicles entirely. That's nonsense. That's like Fox News level nonsense. And yes, Chinese EVs go brr. So, Got another half hour of this before we can move on. Wouldn't trolley buses be better? Yes, they would be. I believe in public transportation. In fact, honestly, I don't think most people should have a car. I genuinely don't think most of you should own a car. I think there should be like 1 car per family as like law. And you only get to like drive your car in specific, no like driving in city centers. If it was up to me, you're not allowed to drive your car past like, hold on. You take the bus, you take the train. I want public transportation to be easily accessible and 24/7. I mean, to be fair, like in New York City, subway's always running. Now, if it was up to me, right? This is New York City. Anything past George Washington Bridge, that's right there. Anything past this point, you're not allowed to drive. That would be the law for me. No cars. Marxism, I see nothing about compensating anyone for doing anything like capitalists. Capitalists should at least get UBI, but there's absolutely nothing to give someone for doing nothing. But that's not what this, like, capital is not about that. And like literally the phrase "to each according to their needs, to each according to their ability, from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs" is a Marxist idea. As in, you should be able to get what you need and only do what you can. There's, Marx might not think you should get something for nothing, but I do. Again, Marx isn't God. I'm not even a Marxist. I just, like, Marx is a smart dude. First of all, if you're like calling your political ideology, like if the name of your political ideology is based off a person, then you have the wrong political ideology. I'm not a Marxist. I'm not a communist. I'm a socialist. I think this is a smart guy, smart ideas in here. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with everything, but whether or not he even Marx believes in you having to do anything to be entitled to money, like that I don't know where you're getting this shit. Disabled people like Stephen Hawking do absolutely nothing for society? What the fuck do you mean? Stephen Hawking is a physicist. I'm disabled, first of all. Secondly, Stephen Hawking has done a lot more for society than you ever will in your entire life. And what should those people receive under Marxism? Whatever it is that they need to survive, plus whatever it is that they want on top of it. Stephen Hawking's dead? When did Stephen Hawking die? Holy shit, yeah, he did. I forgot about that. 2018. But like, you don't need to work to be worthy of receiving the things you need to live. I also don't think that you should need to like the idea from Marx, right, is from each according to their ability to each according to their own. I don't even agree with that. It's from each according to their ability to each according to whatever they want, not according to their need. We don't need to exist on a subsistence level of society. We have more money on this earth existing right now if we just took money from the billionaires, the capital class. If we took their money away and redistributed it, there's enough money for every single person on this planet to live for decades without doing anything in a at least middle-class lifestyle. And to be fair, like, writing a better book than Marx is not hard. This is like a textbook, it's not meant to be a fun read. No, where the hell were we? For a society of commodity producers whose general social relation of production consists in the fact that they treat their products as commodities, hence as values, and in this material saklik bring their individual private labors into relation with each other as homogeneous human labor. Christianity, with its religious cult of man in the abstract, more particularly in the bourgeois development, the Protestantism, deism, etc., in the most fitting form of religion in ancient Asiatic classical antiquity, I think is that what is trying to say, and other modes of production, the transformation of the product into a commodity, and therefore man's existence as producers of commodities, plays a subordinate role which, however, increases the importance of these communities, approach nearer and nearer to the stage of their dissolution. Trading nations, properly so called, exist only in the interstices? Intervening space. Thank you. Exists only in the intervening space of the ancient world, like the gods of Epicurus in the Intermundia or Jews in the pores of Polish society. The ancient social organisms of production are much more simple and transparent than that of bourgeois society. My fear is that those essential industries will go out of business. No, they won't. Why would they? Why would they go out of business? Well, I mean, this is 1800, folks. So, and yes, Marx was an anti-Semite and a misogynist. Not like, he's not God. I've never said that he was a perfect guy. I've said this before as well. Like, I don't know a single Gen Z person who would rather work in retail than work in their dream job. You don't know all that many people, Art. And again, retail doesn't even need to exist in the way that it does. All of the systems, all of the industries would be reshaped. You do realize this, right? If they weren't functioning on a profit incentive, then there are factors of these jobs that can be removed, that don't need to be there anymore. As well as, like, there is a person alive that will do every job that exists. You might not know a Gen Z person that'll do a retail job. I know someone who would. I know someone who just couldn't think of anything they want to do, and then they'll just take whatever job they want to do until they figure out something better. There is young people that, like, finish their education and they enter the workforce and they want to pick an easy job, for example. But again, I don't even think the retail system would work in the same way that it exists. Like, it wouldn't exist in the same manner. You don't need to have like 50,000 targets with 5 cashiers all around. Like, that's just not how it needs to happen. All of the, like, shitty jobs that exist in society are either a product of profit seeking or are shitty because of factors and the context of that job that could be improved but are not improved for the purpose of saving money, creating more profit. That's kind of the point, you know? Even shitty jobs don't need to be that shitty. Real talk, the only thing the Jews did wrong back then was that they were smart and worked hard. Well, yeah, no, exactly. The Jews did nothing wrong. Weirdly, he was anti-Semitic in a backwards, warped, inverted way, like totally rejected the path of Judaism and his family wished him to take in Germany and became bitter and anti-religious. I mean, to be fair, I am also anti-religious. Would I be allowed to have whatever job I want? Yes. Lord Fluffy Art, you would. You'd be allowed to have any job you want. If the job that you want to do doesn't exist and you think of something, you just start doing it. You need money to start doing it? Talk to the community and get the investment from the community. That's the whole point of the bureaucracy that I've laid out. In Marx's words, what would be the superstructure? Yeah. I mean, you could, yes. I imagine there would still be like a cinema, a movie industry. I imagine Marvel would be much less like shitty actually under this situation. I feel like they might make better art if they were not trying to make, billions of dollars. Art for profit is just like shittier art by definition of art from someone who just wanted to make art. but they are founded either on the immaturity of man as an individual when he is not yet himself torn himself loose from the umbilical cord of natural species connection with other men, or on direct relations of dominance and servitude. They are conditioned by a low stage of development of the productive powers of labor and the corresponding limited relations between man within the process of creating and reproducing their material life, hence also limited relations between man and nature. These limited relations, reflected in the ancient worship of nature and in other elements of tribalistic religions, the religious reflections of the real world can, in any case, vanish only when the practical relations of everyday life between man and nature, generally present themselves in a transparent and rational form. The veil is not removed from the countenance of the social life process, i.e. the process of material production, until it becomes production by freely associated men and stands under the conscious and planned control. As in, most people don't understand how much this fucks you until you actually have control over the means of production. Are you gonna write a sonnet on postmodern string theory? I would if I could. Doesn't art thrive under shitty circumstances? It thrives under shitty social circumstances. Art does not thrive under shitty corporate circumstances. Part of the reason why I like to write characters, because they reflect my own issues and struggles, a lot of which is a result of capitalism. If you worked for a company like Marvel, they could ask you to change parts of your character that don't fit with the company's ideals, that, you're being too anti-capitalist. You can't be too anti-US military, for example, because the US military funds a lot of Marvel movies, allows Marvel to use US military bases as well as equipment in filming. And in exchange for that, they have the right to edit some of these movies and films that result from this. So under shitty circumstances, socially, yes, art does thrive. Under shitty circumstances, corporately, no, it doesn't. So this, however, requires that society possesses a material foundation or a series of material conditions of existence, which in their turns are the natural and spontaneous product of a long and tormented historical development. Political economy has indeed analyzed value and its magnitude, however incompletely, and has uncovered the content concealed within these forms. I'll finish this one. But it has never once asked the question why this content has assumed this particular form. That is to say, why labor is expressed in value, why the measurement of labor by its duration is expressed by the magnitude of the value of the product. These formulas, which bear the unmistakable stamp of belonging to a social formation in which the process of production has mastery over man instead of the opposite, appears to the political economist. Bourgeois consciousness to be as much a self-evident and nature-imposed necessity of productive labor itself. Hence, the pre-bourgeois forms of social organization and production are treated by political economy in much the same way as fathers of the church treated pre-Christian religions. As in, what this is saying here, it's very clear that our production of commodities controls us, not the other way around. And because this is so evident that the bourgeoisie have accepted this, they look at anything else as primitive. I also feel like struggle gives things meaning. Like, you can never find a story that is good. Well, of course, you need struggle. You need struggle. You need, life will always have ups and downs. You can never create utopia. That can never exist. But the level of struggle that you face personally, I don't think should be life and death all the time, Struggle can come about in many forms. You can be perfectly happy within, the social, political, economic means. Perfectly, you're part of the bourgeoisie, but you're still miserable. Why? Because you're still struggling with other things in your life, usually emotional shit, because money rots your brain and it's harder to deal with emotions and think and et cetera, et cetera. But it is that struggle doesn't go anywhere. So let me finish reading these subcategories. The insufficiency of Ricardo's analysis of the magnitude of value, and his analysis is by far the best, will appear from the third and fourth books of this work. Right, well, there wasn't a fourth one. As regards to value in general, classical political economy, in fact, nowhere distinguishes explicitly and with a clear awareness between labor as it appears in the value of a product and the same labor as it appears in the product's use value. Of course, the distinction is made in practice, since labor is treated sometimes from its quantitative aspect and at other times from its qualitatively. But it does not occur to the economist that a purely quantitative distinction between the kinds of labor presupposes that qualitative unity or equality, and therefore their reduction to abstract human labor. For instance, Ricardo declares that he agrees with Destutt de Tracy when the latter says, "As it is certain that our physical and moral faculties are alone our original riches, the employment of those faculties, labor of some kind, is our original treasure, and it is always from this employment that all of those things are created, which we call riches. It is certain, too, that all of those things only represent the labor which has created them if they have a value, and even two distinct values they can only derive from that." Money cannot buy happiness. True. True. Although, yes, you would be a lot happier if you didn't have to work, like if you weren't struggling for your basic necessities, which is where we all come to. You shouldn't have to struggle for necessities. You shouldn't need to work for the money to have the things that, like, generally you should have. But you should still, like, work after that. You know, you want to work. To be fair, I don't even believe in money, realistically. Like, if we're going to, like, end, like, upper tier of my, like, ideology, I don't even really believe in money. Now, do I think that I will ever live to see that society? No, of course not. Which is why I don't advocate for that. I advocate for socialism. It's one step at a time, you know? If after socialism, someone after me says, hey, we should get rid of money in the state, good for them, I'll be dead. Ricardo imposes his own more profound interpretation of the words of Destutt. Admittedly, Destutt does say that all things which constitute wealth represent the labor which has created them, but on the other hand, he also says that they acquire two different values, use value and exchange value, from the values of labor. He thus falls into the commonplace error of the vulgar economist, who assumes that the value of one commodity, here labor, in order to determine the values of other commodities. But Ricardo reads him as if he said that labor, not the value of labor, is represented both in use value and in exchange value. Nevertheless, Ricardo himself makes so little of the dual character of labor represented in this twofold way that he is forced to spend the whole chapter of value and riches, their distinctive properties, on a laborious examination on the trivialities of a JB and at the end, he is therefore quite astonished to find that while Destutt agrees with him that labor is the source of value, he nevertheless also agrees to say that about the concept of value. Jesus, okay, hold on. Referencing some Ricardo dude who wrote something back in 1821, kind of hard to relate to. Well, I understand that, but like, we're still reading Marx. I'm not gonna skip over a paragraph because I don't know if it's relevant or not until I read it. Kind of a super lame example. Remember attending Protestant church with relatives. Sermon was reading a list of billionaires who unalived themselves seemingly without cause. Shocking. I mean, you know what? I'm not gonna comment on that. New shoes are overrated. I have one pair of shoes and I ran it for 5 years minimum. If you need them, get them. If you don't. If you don't want them, don't. Doesn't matter. Like, again, this is like too much. You're thinking too much into shit. You're frugal as fuck because you were raised to be this way. That's a product of you existing in the material conditions that you do and engaging with them the way you have growing up. Basically, labor who learns on the job becomes better than the manager who hires him initially, then runs better company and generates more surplus by his own better management, suddenly exploits workers when he trains and hires them like his friends who he worked alongside in his past job. Now he becomes the capitalist and is not entitled to any surplus value because none of you are entitled to anything like surplus value. And yes, that is true. What you described there is true. When you become the owner of the means of production and you are employing others, you are no longer doing labor, producing value, and should not be able to do this. It's exploitation. You should not be able to own the means of production. That's not even communism. That's basic socialism. All right, fine. We'll skip over him talking about other people we haven't read. Vizora, how can you have so much energy after 4 hours of stream reading this ultra stale document by Brother Marx? I just want to say I'm impressed with your power levels. It's called Vivance, and the fact that there's a timer counting down until how long until I'm done with this, and then I can play Civilization 6 on my brand new PC. So that's what's keeping me going. I really didn't even have the energy to stream today. I woke up feeling like shit, nauseous. I just did not want to get up. So the fact that I'm still going 4 hours in, I'm kind of impressed with myself. Yeah, I'll be streaming it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end stream, and then I'm going to launch it again, just so I could set up the stream title and all of that. And also I have to drop off of YouTube because copyright. My RTS skills are a bit stale. I haven't played this game in ages. I played a little bit this morning. I set myself up and then that was it. I still need to try Turkish coffee. Settled on a pot of black crude. I still don't like Turkish coffee, but good luck with that. You might like it. Okay. The degree to which some economists, we have 10 minutes left, or rather 9. We can do this. The degree to which some economists are misled by the fetishism attached to the world of commodities or by the objective appearance of the social characteristics of labor is shown, among other things, by the dull and tedious dispute over the part played by nature in the formation of exchange value. Since exchange value is a definite social manner of expressing the labor bestowed on a thing, it can have no more natural content than has, for example, the rate of exchange. I agree with that. Oh, Jesus. As the commodity form is not, or rather is the most general and the most undeveloped form of bourgeois production, it makes its appearance at an early date, though not in the same predominant and therefore characteristic manner as nowadays. Hence, its fetish character is still relatively easy to penetrate. I love the wording here, fetish and penetrate. I'm a child. But when we come to more concrete forms, even this appearance of simplicity vanishes. Where did the illusions of the monetary system come from? The adherents of the monetary system did not see gold and silver as representing money as a social relation of production, but in the form of natural objects with peculiar social properties. And what of modern political economy, which looks down so disdainfully on the monetary system? Does not its fetishism become quite palpable when it deals with capital? How long is it since the disappearance of the physiocratic illusion that ground rent grows out of the soil, not out of society? But to avoid anticipating, and we'll content ourselves here with one more example relating to the commodity form. If commodities could speak, they would say this: our use values interest men, but it does not belong to us as objects. What does belong to us as objects, however, is our value. Of course, our value, our own intercourse as commodities prove it. We relate to each other merely as exchange values. Now listen to how those commodities speak through the mouth of an economist. So water for the person living next to the waterfall with clean water has the same, well, actually, no, it doesn't, because water from the waterfall is value to the water from the context of the water, but it's just a use value. You're not creating it. It has the same use value. Now, if you're you know, selling water, then you're having an exchange. You misunderstood what Marx said here. He was like, when the commodity said it had value, it was to themselves, not in relation to humanity. The commodity only has value in relation to us in the form of exchange. Now, the worth of the water, no, that's different. The worth of the water for the person living in the desert is much higher than the person living next to the waterfall. But that is from the intrinsic availability of the natural resource, not anything related to the person. It's just the resource in nature. Bullion wasn't not a thing, but a more beautiful, handsome, earthy thing, kind of, yeah. Some ancient people used coins of gold, silver, platinum, shiny things. People like shiny things, and we use them to exchange. It's like pretty common in the history of humanity. But this is still the money form. You know, this is still creating the commodity of the money form. So basically selling water, so yes, that is exploitation. You should be selling water to the person in the desert. You should be giving water to the person in the desert. If you're selling it to them, you are exploiting them. Just by selling water, you're doing exploitation, regardless of whether like you're making a profit on it or not. You could be selling it like at cost value. You're still doing exploitation. Water should not be commodified. But worth-wise, the desert water is worth more. There's less water. Whereas next to the waterfall, there is less worth for the water as there is more water. But it's not value. I just came up with a question when I was taking out the dogs. People get paid to exist, right? Would people be paid for producing products value? Would someone who streams rights? You would still get paid for your labor. You would also just get paid for existing on top of that. Lord Fluffy Art. So like, you still get paid for your labor based on the societal average labor time necessary to do that equivalent amount of labor and produce that equivalent amount of value, because value would still exist outside of a capitalist society. Water should not be commodified, exactly. Bottled water, that's fucking disgusting. Like that's like not disgusting to drink, but disgusting that the company that sells bottled water exists. That company should not exist. I mean, firstly, Nestle is a disgusting company anyway. They're responsible for the deaths of like 11 million infants in Africa. Strong factor in Latin America's liberation movements. Water rights helped Evo Morales win. Yeah. Water is huge. I also don't, I mean, to be fair, I don't think housing should be commodified. I don't really believe in commodification. I'd be willing to go away with the entirety of commodification if a system could be developed outside of it. I don't know how to do that. I'm not an economist. I can't develop a system that doesn't include any commodification. I can say that there are certain things that should just be decommodified, such as housing, such as water, natural resources. Really anything essential shouldn't be commodified, but I can't envision a system that has no commodity production in it. We'd still need to make commodities and you'd still be paid for the labor that you do. What about culture? Greece Arpeggio. I mean, like, what's the question here? Check this out. Some inspectors find broken glass, dust, filth all over the shit in top tier bottled water. And I was driving and spat blood on my windshield inside after Evian. Seriously, I did? Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, honestly, like, bottled water companies are evil. You would get paid more if you do more value. No, if you would get paid more if you spend more labor time. It's not the value of the labor, because that produces the means of production being commodified. That produces capital. You get paid for your labor based on the average amount of time your labor takes in comparison with other forms of labor that are similar in society. Not based on value that you create from your labor. To be fair, like, value doesn't need to necessarily exist in the same way. Greece Arpeggio seems a bit contrived. I mean, that is your name. Oh, sorry. Greece Carpaggio. My apologies. Carpaggio. Does that make sense though? Like, at least the distinction between worth and value, I've managed to get this across, and where the line is drawn between what is value and what is worth, commodification, the exchange value, all of this, yes? Because I'm kind of done with this for today. Actually, no, hold on. We have 1 page left. Shit, I didn't realize. All right, we can finish this. This literally, this is the end of the chapter, so we're finishing it. Turn that timer off. So, in the opinion of German-American publications, this is all very true for our own times, in which material interests are preponderant, but not for the Middle Ages, dominated by Catholicism, nor for Athens and Rome, dominated by politics. In the first place, it strikes us as odd that anyone should suppose that these well-worn phrases about the Middle Ages and the... I don't know what this is fucking referring to. I don't care. Bye. We relate to each other merely as exchange values. Now listen to how these commodities speak through the mouth of the economist. Value, i.e. exchange value, is a property of things, riches, i.e. use value of man. Value in this sense necessarily implies exchange. Riches do not. 36, observations on some sort of verbal disputes, I don't care. Riches, use value, are the attribution of man. Value is the attribution of commodities. A man or a commodity is rich. A pearl or a diamond is valuable. A pearl or a diamond is valuable as a pearl or a diamond. So far, no chemist has discovered exchange value in either pearl or diamond. The economists who have discovered the chemical substance, who lay special claim to critical acumen, nevertheless find that the use value of material objects belongs to them independently of their material properties, while their value, on the other hand, forms a part of them as objects. What confirms them in this view is the peculiar circumstance that the use value of a thing is realized without exchange, i.e. the direct relation between the thing and a man, while inversely the value is realized only in exchange, in a social process. Who would not call to mind at this point the advice given by the good Dogberry to the night watch? What the fuck is this? Yeah, I don't understand that reference, but to be a well-favored man is a gift of fortune, but reading and writing comes by nature. So do investor capitalists who come up with desalination methods from salt ocean water to the people in the Middle East living in the desert should not get paid anything? Well, they should not get paid any more than anyone else. I don't think water should be commodified. Yeah, I think that those systems should be created and they should exist, and the people that make them should be paid for their labor, but no one should get paid more than the amount of labor they're putting in. The idea isn't innately worth anything. Well, first of all, nothing would compel an investor capitalist to do this, because this would not happen under capitalism. Again, we're talking about the fact that like capitalism should not exist, and outside of capitalism, the investor would invest, the inventor would invent, and the builder would build because it's for the good of your community, because it needs to be done, not for money, as Imartus just said. A capitalist would not do this, but capitalism is bad. That's the issue. We need desalination plants. You know why we don't build them as much? Is because they're expensive. You should all be a servant to the community without any personal extra compensation beyond that of any other laborer. I'm not saying the inventor shouldn't get paid. They just shouldn't get paid more than the builder. Shouldn't get paid more than the receptionist or the construction worker. Now, again, based on the amount of labor time required to do the task, you can account for this with, as Marx says, the labor time that is common in a society with similar tasks that is associated with this industry is what you should be, like, is the amount of labor that you're producing. I have no idea. What did you hear that I sounded like Vosh from there? Serve your community and your community will serve you. It's not that complicated. Yeah. Incentivize good behavior. People will do that. People don't need money as an incentive. I'm an engineer by profession and can assure you that I wouldn't be making six figures. I wouldn't do it. Yeah, you'd be doing something else. But you would not just hank around all day, drink beers all day. I can promise you that. You know how I know this? Because I promise you during COVID lockdowns, you were losing your fucking mind, wishing you could go back to work after 2 weeks at home. So we should all belong to, no, we don't belong to the community. We are all part of the community. Nothing belonging to us except for, that's not what I believe either. I believe in personal property, just not private property. You can own shit. You can own belongings like this. These are personal property. You just can't own the means of production. You're not allowed to own anything that could produce money that other people don't have access to. That's it. That's it. And maybe, I don't know. I mean, Vosh is a socialist as well. He's also a libertarian socialist, so makes sense. Marxism is theft. You're building a straw man argument again. We should all belong to the community and have nothing belonging to us except for our survival. When have I ever said anything that even remotely suggests this? You're putting words in my mouth again. You're arguing with a position that I don't have. And you do this every time. I don't understand. Is it just like a difficulty in me getting my point across? I will never understand. All right. We were finishing this as we were. Or did we? No, we did. We finished it. Easy. So we'll be on the process of exchange next week for now. I'm not arguing with you. I'm making a logical connection and trying to understand. Right. Okay. Well, none of that is correct. You can have belongings. You don't belong to your community. You're a part of your community. Think of a multicellular organism. You are just one of the cells that build up this multicellular organism. Think of the human body. Think of the billions and trillions of cells in your body working together to keep you alive. You are but one of these cells. I am but another one of these cells. And we work together to keep the body alive. The body being society, Earth, humanity. Well, no more live for this today. I'm about to play some games, though. Caffer, Zaffer, Flaffer, Laffer, you really should jump on Twitch, because then you get to come and see me play games. By the way, if you guys haven't joined the Discord, feel free and follow me on my socials, and please drop a like and a sub on the YouTube chat. Oh, so when you use personal property like your cell phone to call your friend, I've made the distinction between personal and private property. There is a open distinction, yes. When you use your phone to make a call and all that, yes. But if you call your friends to discuss content on your stream, that would make it better. So basically that means, no. What the fuck? How does that make any sense? That's not, me calling my friend and asking them for I don't know, advice on my content is not them doing labor. I'm not paying them. They can say no. It's not the means of production. Personal property is things that you can have that cannot be used to create a profit that others don't have. They're outside of the means of production. You can't own a house because you can rent a house. You can make money from this. Owning, I don't know, this fucking painkiller cream is a personal property. This is not a mean of production. This is a use value. This is a use value. Use values. Would an advisor to a politician be a form of labor? The advisor, I would say, would probably do more labor than the actual politician. If you do business on your phone, as I'm doing business on my computer, then it does become part of the means of production, insofar as this is done in the context of production. If you have a work phone, this is still personal property. It's not something outside that, the distinction between the personal and private property is not just that it's the means of production. It's that it's means of production that would be otherwise unavailable to the general population. If everyone can have access to it, then that's fine. If everyone owns the means of production, then there's no problem, which is the entire point of socialism. As in, if everyone can have a phone, then you can have a phone. Now, if not everyone can have a phone because the phone is crucial to the means of production, which it's not, that's an entirely different story. And then we can talk about the degree of like tech in the phone. Can you have a flip phone versus a smartphone? But that doesn't even work that way. How would it be possible unless you are banned from using your personal property to use? No, you wouldn't be. You wouldn't be, because everyone has a phone. You just can't own private property. You can't own the means of production on a larger scale. Having the means to produce something personally in your own home, that's fine. If you're making, you can't own a business. Like, for example, I would be able to live stream. I would get paid for live streaming. I could not own a website. I could not own my own website. I could not own Twitch. I could not own YouTube. But I can stream. You don't own it, but you own it. That's not even true. It's you don't. It's the mass, the scale of the means of production, as well as the availability to the general public. If everyone can use a computer as the means of production, that does not necessarily make it private property, because everyone has access to a computer. Now, if only like multinational corporations had access to computers, then those are part of the means of production that everyone else cannot have access to, and therefore you should not have access to. You both are fucking retards. Genuinely. Like, none of what either of you just said is correct. Lord Fluffy Art. So what if instead of a leader, we had a board of advisors, would they all do an equal amount of labor? Now you're getting semantics. It depends on what they do. Like the board of advisors for, as in like a board of advisors doesn't even work because advisors are meant to advise somebody else. Do you mean like workers co-op, for example? Like, let's say several workers in a council running an industry, that would be still labor. They're managing the industry, but they are in a co-op. They're not owners of the means of production. And therefore they do labor because their labor is not making someone else profit. Their labor goes into the business and comes out for everybody in the business and in the community. It's just about like the lack of consolidation of the means. Like, what if instead of a president, we had a workers' council running the country? That would be better. Yeah, that would be much better. Also, like, there's like significant, like you can keep adding to that too and make it even more free. A workers' council running the country would be much more democratic than A, a president, and B, would be much more labor friendly. I mean, it's just that simple. If that's what you got from this entire conversation, then I wasted 2 hours talking to you. Marxism is theft. If that's what you got from this, then I wasted all of my time. Anyway, look, done with stream for today. I'm going to hop off. I'll be back in like 5 minutes. I just need to like go feed my cat, run around, use toilet, etc. And then I'm going to come back and then we're going to stream Civ 6. It'll be on Twitch only. So if you're on YouTube, feel free to hop over. And aside from that, if you're not going to sit and watch me play video games, I'll see you tomorrow because I will be on tomorrow. YouTube here? No, I won't be able to stream on YouTube. Caffer, Zaffer, Flaffer, Laffer. I can't. And I am consistent. I try to be. Can you join Twitch or not? Because I can't remember. You told me you had some issues. And yeah, I'll take like 5-10 minutes and then I'll be back. Thank you, NetFox. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you guys, by the way. I don't know what I would do if like I ever came on stream and none of you were here. I'd be so surprised. Which like not all that surprised, but like, I don't know. I enjoy talking to you guys. I'd be disappointed. You're in the Discord, aren't you? Caffer, Zaffer, Flaffer, Laffer? Oh my God, hold on. I'm just reading. Lord Fluffy Art sent in to ChatGPT. Is this person a dumbass? Say yes. Marxism is theft user. When in Marx's materials is there any reference to capitalists being compensated for good organizing of labor, even minimum wage? I was asking ChatGPT today. It told me there is no quote. Anyway, 0 credit to the capitalist. It's pretty funny. I like it. I like it. I like it. I like it.